So what do you want?
What do I want? I want to use my degree for good. And in general.
I kind of meant like a muffin or a latte.
I want a job with a generous work-from-grocery-store policy.
You are here a lot.
Debbie, please, I'm working.
I want a job that will change the world.
Ma'am, this is a drive-thru.
And some nuggets.
With LinkedIn's new AI-powered job search, you can find roles that match your unique skills so you can dare to discover more. Visit linkedin.com/jobs to learn more.
I'm Aislyn Greene, and this is Unpacked, the podcast that unpacks the world's most interesting destinations and the deeper stories behind travel. This month, we're diving into Afar's annual Where to Go list, and this year's list is a little different because in 2026, we want to lessen the burden on over-touristed destinations and help expand visitation to other parts of the world. And that's why our editors carefully selected 24 emerging regions and overlooked cities that I promise will inspire you to start planning your next great adventure. They've certainly done that for me. On the list are places like Bucharest, Romania, aka the Little Paris of the East, and Japan's quiet and lovely Sado Island. We released the full list on December 4th, and on Unpacked over the next 2 months, we're going to be exploring 15 of those destinations by talking with the writers who traveled to and shared our favorite new places. Today, we have Katherine LaGrave. She is Afar's executive editor who steers the ship of our print magazine, as well as the host of our Unpacked 5-question series. This past summer, she traveled to Sweden, and as an open water swimmer and a lover of all things outdoors, she skipped Stockholm and instead headed for the Stockholm Archipelago. It's a series of 24,000 islands about the size of Connecticut, and it's home to a new 170-mile-long hiking path network. And there, Katherine spent several days hiking through pine and oak trees, refueling with Swedish meatballs, and of course, sweating it all out in the many saunas, or saunas. Katherine, welcome to Unpacked. It's so nice to have you on this side of the mic.
Yes, I'm happy to be here.
All right. Well, your story for our Where to Go package was very inspiring. What took you to the Swedish archipelago to hike, of all things?
I've spent a fair amount of time in other Nordic countries. You and I have talked about Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, and I've loved it. But I'd not ever been to Sweden, and I've always loved the nature and the design and the food. And this trail was a new initiative. It's launched in October 2024, and every few years, my cousin and I take a big trip, and so this really caught my eye as a perfect time to go to Sweden. And after her college graduation is this big trip, and I told her, I'm really interested in Sweden, and she'd been a lot before, actually, because on her side of the family, they're from Sweden, and so I was a bit hesitant about her being interested in it again, and she stopped me and said she just pinned up like a photo of a red sauna in an archipelago like on her wall like a week before, so it was meant to be.
Okay, that's incredible. Well, and you spent a week there hiking along this trail. What was that like?
Yeah, we spent a week and covered about 62 miles, and so the whole trail is 170 miles and 20 islands. And so we still did a good chunk of it, right? The islands are really well connected by ferry. So we'd arrive on an island, we'd drop our bags, and we'd set out on a trail. So we were averaging about 6 to 7 miles a day. And I say hiking, but a lot of it is walking. There was some
you're not scrambling up the mountains.
Not mountains, but there was some scrambling, and but a lot of it is just walking in the forest, and certainly some scrambling and more technical parts, but most of it wasn't very complicated. It was kind of the hiking or walking that I enjoy. I had just done a trip in Chile previously, and my cousin was teasing me like, oh, this is more of your sort of speed because it's a bit flatter, because I was telling her about that 12-hour ascent that I took there. But this was really beautiful because I think the balance of technical skill, let's call it, with the beauty meant that I could really enjoy it. You weren't so constantly feeling stressed physically. I wasn't. I should note that my cousin would run 4 or 5 miles before we hiked every morning. She's a big fitness nut, so keep in mind that this is the level of fitness required. But then we would do those hikes, and we would go back to our accommodation, and we would have some downtime. We'd go for a swim. We'd take a sauna. We'd do some reading. We'd have dinner. And most of these islands have one or two places. A lot of times the dining is attached to the lodge. And then we'd get up the next morning and do it again on another island. Or if we were staying there, we'd cover a different part of the island. But I actually loved getting to and from the islands because it's quite an old system. Like you go down to the ferry dock. Again, a lot of these are really small islands, and you raise a semaphore to have the boat pick you up. Yeah, because if you don't, they won't stop. And so, I was like, watch me do it. And I would pull it up. And but of course, I was, me, I was like, we have to get there really early because if the boat is early and we have to race the signal. And, but Swedish people are also pretty on time. So I wasn't the only person who was like there early and ready with the semaphore, but it was a great joy to be able to participate in that system.
And then do you walk on the ferry? And is it a ferry like you might think of in the traditional sense? Or are we talking about like a small fishing boat where they're just like, here, let's move some crab pots and you can sit down?
No, they're ferries, but it's a whole system that connects the archipelago. And so some of the ships are larger than others. Some of them do have room for cars, but most don't. But they're pretty similar. Like you walk on, the sort of tongue of the boat opens, and then you walk on, and there are seating areas, and there are also seating areas on top. There's always a little cafe, but it's pretty efficient. They're on a timeline because they'll go to one island, and 10 minutes later they stop at another and stop at another, at least on the schedule. Again, you have to raise the semaphore. Or they check your ticket and say, where are you getting off? Okay. And then they make a note of it.
How many islands would you say you visited in total across that week? Roughly.
So we probably did, I want to say 7 islands.
Oh, wow.
A lot of them, we did a few day trips. There was one where we did a boat taxi, which is another way of getting around, where we just hired someone to take us to an island, and then we started from the top. Like he brought us to the top of the island, and then we hiked all the way to the south and got the ferry then back. It's just a factor of accommodation and, what we could do in the time that we had. So I think we actually stayed on 5 islands, and then we visited 7 or 8.
Amazing. Well, so accommodation, that's something I wanted to talk to you about because it sounds like you all stayed predominantly in lodges, but can you do people actually go backpacking there, or is that the main way that you would actually stay on these different islands?
So it's a real mix of accommodations. Like there are lodges, but again, because most of these islands, several of them are nature reserves, the accommodation is really limited and they're provided by the Swedish government. But to give you an example of the range, like one of the places we stayed on the island of, I'm just going to pronounce it.
Let's hear it.
No, the English way. Grinda. They would say like, Grinda. Grinda, which is exactly how they'd say it, was the Ward's house, which is this historic house, incredible, that used to be the summer residence of the director of the Nobel Prize Committee. And it's this really stately lodge. It's got a crackling fireplace and a huge, beautiful entryway and dining hall. And it has little cottages that are associated with it. And then on the island of Ingmarsö, we stayed at this B&B that used to be a farmhouse. We had the whole floor and this garden to ourselves. The last island we stayed at, Finnham, and we stayed at a hostel, which I haven't done in a long time. And, she and I shared a room, but we shared a bathroom with
all the other people.
all the other people. So it's really a range. Most people that we encountered were staying in these accommodations, B&Bs, hostels, but you can also camp, thanks to Sweden's right to roam laws. You can camp anywhere. Generally, one night is always allowed, provided you don't disturb wildlife, and there are stricter rules for nature reserves. And obviously, you can't camp right in front of someone's house, but you are able to camp.
Even hearing you talk about this trip, I feel like my blood pressure is dropping, which is interesting because we just saw, and maybe this is a gimmick, but Sweden is trying to position itself as the first prescription destination in the world. Like doctors would prescribe travel to Sweden for health reasons. So did you feel healthier? Did you feel more relaxed and at peace at the end of this?
Definitely. I mean, I think being out in the natural world always centers me. And I certainly feel that when my goal is disconnection. And Sweden as a country, even being there for the first time, there's just such a reverence for nature. And I mean, these islands, they weren't overcrowded, but there were also lots of day trippers and people just going to be and experience this slice of a bit more nature that's so accessible from Stockholm. You can really see the ways that the nature is cared for and maintained and so clean. And, I'd love to bottle that feeling of like just walking in the woods and having it be silent, or diving into this freezing lake after a long day of hiking. So I can definitely see why you'd be prescribed a trip there.
Because that was one of the lines that really jumped out at me in your story was, I think you said that you and your cousin were hiking for like 30 minutes and you realized that you hadn't talked, that you were just quiet, and you've also assigned and edited at least one story about the world's quietest places. So what was it like to just listen?
Yeah, it's funny you ask that, because that did become a real joke between us, because we'd be walking in these forests totally alone. I mean, you don't really see people, and you pass people maybe and there's a nod, but you're out there hearing the birds. If you're walking by the water, you're hearing the waves and just really the sound of our footsteps. And of course, I would ruin the silence by commenting on the silence. Like, can you believe how quiet it is? Like, just the amazement of that sort of after every 30 minutes. And my cousin would say, come on. But I will say it's a real gift to be in a place like that where it's not just quiet, but it's someone that you can feel quiet with, right? Like there wasn't a need for us to fill the silence. We would just sort of settle into this feeling or understanding, and certainly the environment was conducive to that.
All right, listen up, nacho chips. Quiet down, crispy potatoes. This is the moment Velveeta's been preparing you for, and you're not about to crack under pressure. Today's the day to go all in on the drip. Velveeta's Heat and Eat Queso is the MVP of any game day spread, so stick by them, and you'll be golden. Now get out there and make delicious history. No tailgate party is complete without Velveeta.
This episode is brought to you by FX's The Beauty Official Podcast. Join host Evan Ross Katz on the official podcast for FX's hottest new series, The Beauty, taking you behind the scenes with its amazing stars as they discuss the show's most jaw-dropping moments. Featuring Evan Peters, Anthony Ramos, Jeremy Pope, Ashton Kutcher, Rebecca Hall, Bella Hadid, Meghan Trainor, Isabella Rossellini, Jessica Alexander, and Ari Grainer. Search FX's The Beauty wherever you listen to podcasts.
All right. Well, at the end of the day, you're hungry. What were your favorite things to eat?
Well, I mentioned getting around by ferry, and I think I mentioned the cafes. So every ferry has a cafe, like no matter how small the ferry is, all of the ones that we encountered, they have cafes selling sandwiches, coffee, pastries, which are huge in Sweden. And so I would always get my second or third cardamom bun of the day as we're like moving between islands. Again,
that's very on brand for you.
It's on brand for me compared to my cousin running her 6 miles before. And so one of the best things that I ate was a cardamom bun from a bakery in Ingmarsö. One of the people that we met on the boat who worked on the boat, he told me when we were leaving, because I had gotten a bun on the boat on the way to Ingmarsö, and he said, oh, actually, the buns are from the bakery, and we always load up, and this is how we supply them. So then when I was on Ingmarsö, we went 2 days in a row, got the buns, and then when I was on the boat back, I got them as well. So definitely buns. And my cousin and I also had a thing where, even though I'm vegetarian, I would get the meatballs. We would get the meatballs every island we went to so we could compare them, because it's a classic Swedish dish, right? Swedish meatballs, mashed potatoes, and lingonberries. It's something that's really hard to beat after a long day of hiking, especially when some of the days we were hiking were rainy and a little cool. And so we had so many cardamom buns and meatballs that my brother started calling it our ball and bun tour.
I love that. Yes, that's great.
And also another thing that I liked, but maybe it was an only in Sweden thing. I was never really a big fan of shrimp before. And my cousin would always get the toast skagen, which is essentially a shrimp salad with lots of mayonnaise, or maybe it's creme fraiche, but mixed with a lot of dill, and then it's piled high on this toasted bread, and it's served with a slice of lemon. And so it's a really seasonal, if you, I guess, are eating it during the right time, which we were, fresh appetizer. And I was like, I like this. When in Sweden. And I liked it. Yeah, so I would say those three things.
So the other part you mentioned, this plunging into the cold waters after a long day of hiking, but I imagine that many times that was preceded by, some minutes in the sauna, and I'm pronouncing it the correct way because I know. I'll link to that story in the show notes. That's the sauna. So what was that? Because that was what inspired your cousin to go, right? She wanted to be in a sauna in the forest. So
yes.
Did you do it?
Both of us are big sauna heads. It was on her mood board, and both of us actually have them in our family homes. So we sauna, I can't believe you're making me say it like this, but we did that a few times on different islands, and it's such a popular part of Swedish culture, and so you had to reserve times. You couldn't just show up, because again, a lot of these are islands with 60 to 100 full-time year-round residents, and so when travelers come, you need to reserve spots. So one of my favorite experiences was on Finnhamn, which was the last island that we visited. And so we reserved this sauna for an hour, and it had this incredible view out to the water and a little sort of boardwalk most of the way that would lead you to this semi-private beach. And so we would sauna for 10 to 15 minutes. I mean, this thing was hot. It was cooking.
Like red face, sweat pouring down.
Oh, sweat pouring down, So she and I had staggered it. So we would be in there for 10 to 15 minutes. And then we'd run out and dive into the water, which was freezing, but just felt incredible. I mean, So a group of Swedish men had booked the sauna after us, and they were keeping their polite distance down by the beach until it was their turn. And I remember running on one of my second to last jumps into the water, and just running and diving in, and all of them going like, wow, and applauding, and they were kind of wincing and waiting, which I definitely don't think is the way to go.
Yeah. No, you just have to do it. You
just have to do it. And I mean, it was probably 60 degrees outside, and the water was definitely, that year-round water temperature is not very warm. So I think it helped. That's why we were running from the sauna, because we're so hot. And we're like, don't lose
the hot. You can't lose the hot.
Yeah.
One of my favorite moments of you was when we were in Toronto and you went and did that sauna experience and then the really, really cold plunge, and you came back and you said something along the lines like, I feel like I could kick the door in. So did you also feel equally invigorated?
I did, definitely. That was a private moment. But I think science shows that, right? You sort of push your body to these limits, and then you feel adrenaline spikes. And that's what I was saying earlier about the prescriptive element of nature, or even Sweden recommending certain experiences. I would love to bottle that feeling of what it's like to be in a sauna after a long day of hiking, right? And then just running into the water. Felt incredible. It's certainly my favorite way to end a long day on the trail.
Well, I would love to close with your advice for people who want to replicate this trip. So maybe one of the first questions people might ask is, do you have to bring a swimsuit for the sauna? Wait, I think it's a legitimate question for the shy Americans.
I can't talk about my cousin too much on this podcast, but she was really like, I don't need a suit. I can just be, and I was like, I think we do, because of the timed thing. So yes, bring a swimsuit. And, a lot of places did say that, because even though you can book an hour, sometimes that slot will be shared with other people. So be prepared. I actually think maybe there was a miscommunication, and those polite Swedish men were supposed to be in the sauna with us. And we were like, no, it's just us, even though there's room for 15 people. So yes, I would definitely have a swimsuit for sauna and for swimming.
Yeah. Is there anything that you wish you'd known before you went, or something that you feel like was just important in terms of the planning of all of this?
I think you and I had talked about, is this a trip that you can do spontaneously?
Yeah,
and certainly you can. It would be more difficult because of the lodging, and accommodations tend to fill up because they're pretty limited on the island. So if you're camping, that's different, right? Some of the islands have campgrounds, others don't. But again, you can camp in most places. But if you're booking accommodation, I would start by choosing a part of the archipelago, which is really quite massive. So generally, these are classified as southern, which is one portion, middle and outer, and then middle and northern. We did middle and northern because we were interested in a lot of the nature reserves and, frankly, the bakeries. But I would take a look at the groups of islands in the archipelago and see what they offer and what interests you there. If it's a new restaurant, if it's a new maritime park, for example. And then you'll be able to pretty easily build an itinerary because the ferry schedule is online, and so you can see when those ships are coming and going. Because the ferry system is the best way to move to these islands, and a lot of people on the islands have bikes and sort of these motorized tricycles, but not really full cars. And I would say the best way to get around the islands themselves is still by foot or by bike. And places have bike rentals.
What about navigating? Like, did you bring paper maps? Or is there an app? How did you kind of get around?
So we would use the app to figure out where we're starting for the trailheads. And those maps work offline as well.
Is it just Google Maps?
No, it's part of the Stockholm Archipelago trail.
Oh, cool. Okay.
But then once you're on the trail, it's incredibly well signposted. I mean, there are
nice.
bands
Okay.
with yellow, blue, and white reflecting, the colors of the Swedish flag and also of the sky and the sun. And those are also reflective. So when it starts to be dusk, it's easy to see. And so those would probably be every, 20 feet or so.
Got it. Okay. Any other tips? Maybe gear, or it sounds like layers are probably key to a trip
Layers
like
are
this.
key. Good rainproof gear.
Yeah.
A good pair of waterproof boots, and that's really what you need. Maybe a sweater or a shirt for dinner. But most of these places are pretty casual, and the clientele they're seeing is people that are coming to hike the trails. But I would say, as with any hiking or walking trip, pack what you can carry. We were both using packs. And in most cases, you're walking from the boat dock to the accommodations. Sometimes it's a 5-minute walk. Sometimes it's a mile. But just be prepared for that.
Yeah, but nice that you don't actually necessarily have to carry all of your gear while hiking, unless you were doing the camping part of it. Like you could drop it at your lodge and then do a light day pack or something.
Yeah, in some cases we did hike from one island to another, but for most islands you're not able to do that. So it wouldn't make sense to have your pack the whole time because they're so well designed that oftentimes you're doing a loop back to the main area or to the accommodation. So it's not one trail in that sense. It's more of like a trail that's connected across islands, but you don't need to always have your gear with you. Does that make sense? In a way that the Appalachian Trail would be.
Totally. Or like when we did the Kumano Koto last year, it was like, wasn't any kind of loop you had to hike from accommodation. So you had to carry everything at all times. So this sounds fantastic. I'm sold.
I know. She was already talking about doing the other 100 miles.
Yeah. Well, Katherine, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us.
Tak. Hej da.
Bye. Hey da.
Perfect.
Great. Perfect. Thank you so much for joining this special episode of Unpacked. In the show notes, you'll find links to the full Where to Go list, as well as to the places that Katherine suggested. You'll also find other travel resources to help you jumpstart your 2026 travel planning. We'll release more Where to Go episodes from now through December 19th, and then again starting on January 1st. Happy travels!